LaShondra Walker, and today I will be focusing on the theorist Arlene Stein. Where was Arlene Stein born? Arlene was actually born in New York City on March 18th at 1959. At the time of her birth, her father was actually renting an apartment at in Washington D.C. because he had recently immigrated over from Poland, and that was right at the start of right after World War II. Her family lineage. Arlene Stein is the daughter of Pearl Sugarman and Lawrence Stein. Lawrence Stein was a Jewish immigrant, as I said before, and he entered into the United States shortly after the end of World War II. At that time, he lived in Washington. So prior to him coming to the United States, he actually lived in Cuba and Sweden for 5 years. And his only surviving relative, a male who immigrated to the United States before World War II began, asked him to come over, and he thought that he would have a better life here. So he immigrated here. He met Pearl Sugarman, and from there they were married only after a few weeks of dating. All right, her family procreation, which is the family she created herself, she actually married Nancy C. Coleman, and they have one child together. Her son's name is Louis Solomon Stein, and he is actually pictured on the slide next to Arlene Stein. Her educational background it consists of the highest educational standard. She obtained her bachelor's in history from Amherst University in 1980. From there, she proceeded to the University of California, Berkeley, where she obtained her master's of arts in sociology in 1988. In 1993, she earned her doctorate of sociology from the University of California, Berkeley. Her work background. Arlene Stein began her career as a sociology lecturer at the University of Essex. The University of Essex is actually in the United Kingdom, and she lectured there between 1993 and 1994. She then moved to the University of Oregon, where she became an assistant professor of sociology. She worked at the University of Oregon from 1994 until 2001. In 2001, she joined Rutgers University, where she has worked since then. So that was 2001 until present. Um, at Rutgers, she is actually the professor. Well, she is actually a professor of sociology at Rutgers. She also was the chair of the American Sociological Association Sexualities Department between 1998 and 1999. Arlene Stein has written many books. Some of her most famous works include The Stranger Next Door, The Story of a Small Community, Battles Over Sex, Faith, and Civil Rights, Sex and Sensibility, Stories of Lesbian Generations, and in Going Public, A Guide for Social Scientists. Interesting facts. Arlene Stein is a renowned sociologist. We all know that. But one important fact about her is during her time at the University of California, where she was getting her master's, most of her peers were planning to become doctors, teachers, lawyers, and she knew then that she wanted to be a sociologist. So she went against what everyone else was doing, and she decided to do her own thing. So one interesting fact about her is she found something that she loved, and she stuck with it no matter what anybody else thought was the right path for her. All right, her important contributions include the works that I discussed before, which were several books that she's written, and they are actually used by sociologists now for points of reference. Um, Her contribution in the fields of sociology cannot be underestimated at all, because she has provided work for many people to reference and to use to understand those who are not like them. She also encourages us to tell stories about our own lives so that people who may not have the same background or the same experiences through social interaction, that they still understand someone else's point of view. She has written a lot of books and articles, and she continues to use social media to spread her ideologies to the public in hopes of everyone gaining more insight to those who are different than themselves. All right, one of her latest books, which is Unbound Transgender Men and Remaking of Identity. This book was released in June 2018. This book this book is described as a catalyst for a thoughtful and yet complicated topic regarding the acceptance of transgender individuals in the current society. Stein admits that despite the recognition of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community in the American culture, the fight is not over, and there is more that can be done to create a safer and equal community where all people can live and flourish together, no matter their sexual orientation. All right, so also she notes in this book that society has taken up the role and duties of defining gender possibilities, establishing specific ways of living in the modern world with disapproving and diminishing others, and in the process, it makes some ways of being man and woman more acceptable than others, while most of the existing literatures on the subject of transgender has mainly focused on transgender women. Stein found the need to extend this research into transgender men living in the community. And so by doing this, she decided to follow four individuals. Three of them were transgender men, and one was non-conforming, so they did not identify as male, female, or conform to any kind of sexual preference or anything like that. So she took it upon herself to shed light on their experiences and show Americans some of the things that they face and help us understand what it's like to be somebody who is transgender. I Can't Even Think Straight is a work that she did with Ken Palmer. So in this book, um, according to Stein and Palmer, queer theorists claim that existing gay strategies and minority group strategies in general have tended to rely on conceptual dualism that reinforce the notion of minority as other and create binary oppositions which leave the center intact. This separation has been created based on who a society views as a norm. In this case, heterosexual individuals view those who are not heterosexual as others. So basically, as heterosexual individuals, in order for them to remain the center, they began to use ways to exclude people who do not have the same viewpoints as them. So in order to remain the majority, heterosexuals just basically create a narrative where homosexuals are not included, making them the outs. All right, I can't even think straight. The strengths and weaknesses of this topic. Stein and Plummer's contribution to queer theory has provided assistance with identifying how others are constructed. Society was constructed with the idea of a norm, and that consisted of heterosexual individuals, and as time evolved, openly gay individuals became more prevalent. Openly gay couples are now the not are now they are I'm sorry are no longer the minority group. However, we still refer to them in this manner so that our original society remains that way. As time continues to change and personal experience began to grow from one generation to the next, the acceptance of other as a majority may increase and become the norm. So, one weakness that was found in that theory, I can't even think straight, is what is going to happen when mass media makes this more acceptable. The more experiences someone has, the more likely it is for the center to actually break. So, I think it would have been helpful had she um, went on to talk about, well, what would happen as time evolves. So what will happen to the center? Will the center begin to accept it? Because as experiences change, so does society. Okay. Okay. So Implication into my own life. We are aware that white Americans no longer the majority because Hispanic and African Americans account for a large part of the population, as well as more gay couples are prevalent. This is seen in our military because now transgender individuals are now free to serve. I have a friend who is transgender, and they are not willing to enlist into the military because they are afraid of how they'll be perceived. So at this point, uh, Stein and Plummer talk about the queer theory and how the center must stay intact. So although laws are being written and we're all understanding, or we are all aware of gender differences, we are most individuals are still afraid of actually taking part in something that they would normally want to, just on the basis of fearing that the center may fear being broken, and they might face the consequences of that. The reluctant witness survivors, their children, and the rise of Holocaust consciousness. In this work, she actually uses Holocaust survivors' children as to show how our society is changing socially and how the views are changing as the community learns new ways of doing things. Okay, strengths and weaknesses of this is Stein's work largely is done to provide assistance with navigating our complex society that consists of gender and social navigation. Her contribution to sociology is in the form of this book, of course, and she uses it to show how things are changing. So one weakness is what would happen um, if someone wasn't receptive to the change. She didn't go into detail about that. I think it's very important to analyze. Just because you learn something from your parents and you hear about all of these different things, what would happen if you're not one of those people who are willing to conform to that? All right, my conclusion. Stein's contribution to sociology has been renowned and provides assistance with the navigation of our complex world and the diversity that we all should encounter. We are now aware of how transgender society members may feel after social interactions, and also the importance of the voices of genocide survivors' children that has now become the voice that helps us understand how traumatic the experience was. Through Stein's work, heterosexual individuals are now more aware of the extremes that are exhibited in hopes of remaining the majority group in our population.